Galina Sharapova is waiting for us in Pavlodar on the morning of the 8th day. Galina comes from a Cossack family, the Karbyshevs. We had hoped to talk to her and leave immediately for Altai Krai. However, she has other plans for us. She insists that we go and meet Maria Terenik, a local professor and historian. We agree.
Our town is tightly connected with the Karbyshevs. We've been here for a long time. We, with Maria Terenik, have been pushing for the establishment of the Karbyshev Museum for about 27 or 28 years. Mother's house was intact, as well as 3 other houses of the Karbyshev family. We wanted to make one of them a museum, but it didn't work out. The local authorities don't care about the Karbyshevs, you know.
The author of dozens of books on history, Professor Terenik, tells us how she settled in Kazakh Pavlodar.
Well, I entered the Novosibirsk Pedagogical Institute in 1946. Then there was flooding in Siberia. All the universities were closed.
We took sickles in our hands and harvested crops knee-deep in water, then tied up the sheaves and then carried them up the hill. The post-war famine began and people rushed to Kazakhstan, so our family came here. I graduated from Kazakh Pedagogical Institute and was sent to Pavlodar. In 1960, I went to graduate school and in 1965 completed my postgraduate studies. In 1966, I decided to work in the Pavlodar Industrial University and worked there for 35 years. I wrote 38 books. My family lives in the Moscow region. My daughter, my husband and their son. My grandson works in the Botkin hospital. And where do you live?
I live in Orenburg.
Ah, Orynbor.
Yeah, Orynbor.
And where do you live?
Orynburg too. Pavlodar wasn't renamed, by the way.
Because we're struggling. This book is called Pavlodar is not Kirikou. They wanted to rename Pavlodar as Kirikou. What is Kirikou? In the 18th century, Nikita Karakov, a salt manufacturer, who had 2 lakes not far from here, from which he extracted salt. The town was named in his honor, Karakov. For some reason, they thought it was the Kazakh word Kirikou. Here we oppose the name Kirikou. There is a tribal leader called Kirikou in Africa. Boris Isayev, the former secretary of the regional party committee, lives in Pavlodar. He's also a poet, and in general, he's strongly opposed to this renaming. He wrote an article and finished it with a poem.
Перелицовщики, манкурты, вам, аномастики, кричу, что быть почетным кирикуйцем я никогда не захочу. Это была первая волна.
That was the first wave, and now the second starts. They say things like, Huranov is Karbyshev and Huranov is Terenik.
Кто такой Карбышев?
I can never forgive Arman Koni.
He has no idea about history and suddenly declares that Karbyshev is a deserter, that he fled from the army dressed in civilian clothes. Only someone who has lost all sense of decency can say that. The whole world knows who Karbyshev is.
Tell me what TV channels you watch, what news programs, maybe even what journalists.
I always watch the Russian First Channel and Russia 24. I follow the news from Ukraine. My husband comes from Ukraine. They moved here from Ukraine. We've always had great relations between Russians and Ukrainians.
What's your attitude to this conflict?
My attitude is negative, of course. I was in a shop not long ago and asked for a chocolate bar.
И говорю, дайте мне плитку шоколада.
They gave me one. I asked where it was
Мне не подают,
produced.
я говорю, а чё это?
They said it was made in
Производство.
Ukraine at Poroshenko's factory.
Порошенко. Я говорю, возьмите
I gave it
назад,
back.
я не хочу
I don't
даже-
want his chocolate.
Даже так. Я просто очень мне жаль украинский народ, который до сих пор находится в таком состоянии. И с другой стороны, ну, прозреют они в конце концов, они уже прозревают. Но вот эта элита, которая буквально занимается, ну, издевательством над своим собственным народом. Крым,
We all applauded
как
the
на
Crimea
всех
reunification, but they
Нет,
can't
вот
just leave it
с одной
alone. They
стороны,
strike
с
from all
другой стороны,
sides.
как-нибудь, что-нибудь надавливает. В общем,
So there are Ukrainians and there are Hohols. I cannot stand the
я
Hohols.
хохлов терпеть не могу.
Galina invites us to her house. She lives in a listed building, a wooden 19th century house facing the river. Galina's father was an artist. The house is full of his works and works of his friends.
Here is a goblin.
The house gives you the fantastic feeling that time has stopped still. While Galina's daughter is laying the table, we talk.
I was born on the 4th year after the Great Patriotic War in a family of clerical workers. My mother came here from Moscow under the orders of the River Fleet and stayed here because she met my father. My father came from a family of Siberian Cossacks, the Sharapovs and the Karbashevs. His mother was born Karbasheva.
After the fall of the USSR, did you want to move to Russia?
We didn't think of that at the time. Only when our children grew up and grandchildren appeared did I start to think about their future. We don't have any career prospects here because of the Kazakh language. We learn Kazakh at school, but it's not enough. You need a linguistic environment too. The A grades at school mean nothing. My granddaughter got straight A's but couldn't speak Kazakh. She studied here for 1 year and then moved to Omsk. I took a decision. Daniil should follow in the footsteps of our ancestors. We'll send him to the cadet corps after high school. All the men in our family studied in the cadet corps. Only my father couldn't do that because he was the son of a so-called public enemy. My grandfather was shot in 1937. He was an army officer. The pensioners feel okay here. We get our pension and they treat us well. But there's no place for our children because we need to speak perfect Kazakh. We had some Russians here who spoke Kazakh, even Russians in the government, but in time they all moved.
Do you still think of moving to Omsk?
I guess I will move to Omsk. Year by year, I delay the decision. If I move, I will lose my friends and connections. I lose Maria Tyrannik, all my remaining friends. Our Siberian mentality is so interconnected with the Kazakh mentality. Ordinary people are all so similar. If you talk to Kazakhs, they think just the same way we do. They are not happy that Russians are leaving. They are very worried too. They understand there is no place for Russians in administration here. There are 41 non-Kazakh communities living in Pavlodar, but none of them is represented in the government. Kazakhs say, what's the problem? We've learned the Russian language, so you learn Kazakh too. But even if you know the Kazakh language, the services of the state take only ethnic Kazakhs.
Do you follow the news from Russia?
Sure I do. I love Russian TV programs, especially news and analyses.
Which programs?
Well, for example, the one with Babayan, The Right to Know, and Your Vote, Solovyov's talk show. These are must-watch for me. I love these shows. I even talk to the TV set sometimes. That's the way it goes.
After a tasty dinner, we leave for Altai Krai in Russia. We cross the border once again, hoping to find the village of Kirey before it gets dark. We read that this village in Russia has a school where they have been studying in the Kazakh language since the day it was founded in 1926. We are in luck and find the village and the principal of the school pretty easily. The village residents are all Kazakhs. Once again, we have plunged into a Kazakh world in Russia after coming from a Russian world in Kazakhstan. The principal explains how they have managed to preserve their traditional lifestyle.
Mother tongue is a cornerstone. It should be learned from early childhood, otherwise it might be forgotten. Kazakhs and Kazakhstan were close to losing their language. You know that. That was the official policy in the Soviet times. I say the language should be preserved. If you preserve Kazakh schools, then you preserve a language too. If you speak a mother tongue, then you can preserve the culture and traditions. They complain, oh, we don't have Kazakh teachers. How could we preserve our school here? Our kids learned the Kazakh language and could easily enter Kazakh universities. After graduating, many of them came back to our school as teachers. I myself studied in the school 49 years ago, then entered a teaching college with the Kazakh classes in Pavlodar, then returned here and worked as an elementary school teacher. I also entered Karaganda State University, the Department of Distance Learning for Kazakh Language and Literature. Our first classes in Kazakh were held in 1993 in Kazakhstan. Our lecturers, professors, didn't speak perfect Kazakh themselves. I always corrected them. Where are you from? They asked. I'm from Russia. How is it possible? They asked. You speak Kazakh perfectly. I said, I'm an ethnic Kazakh. All my life I've been teaching in a Kazakh school in Russia. In my opinion, if a teacher is not up to speed on what he's teaching, then he's not a teacher. During our last conference after completing the course, I was the only principal who addressed the audience in Kazakh. Mongolian colleagues also did the same. They have preserved the Kazakh language very well.
What about the textbooks?
Well, this school is almost 90 years old. I've worked here for 49 years, 30 years as a principal, 15 as a deputy principal. We often used to go to Kazakhstan to bring textbooks. We also bargained with the Regional Department of Education, which bankrolled our school books. You know, we don't need many books, not 1,000 or 500.
How many students do you have?
The situation is different today because we follow the laws of the Russian Federation. We used to work as a Kazakh school for 86 years and we've become a Russian school recently. Today we are working as a Russian school, but only for elementary classes. We study in the Russian language, but if the kids don't understand, we translate everything into Kazakh. This is a transition period. It's all done according to the prescribed methodology. We can't just leave a kid without a Kazakh translation. They have a right to education. It's a tough thing for them, because this is a 100% Kazakh village. There are no Russian families here. But the Kazakh language is still taught as a subject from kindergarten.
When did the changes come into force?
In 2011. The Russian Federation brought us under its control in 2011. We carefully studied this standard. Our first Russian-speaking group now studies in the 5th grade.
How did the Regional Department of Education explain that? Were they displeased that students didn't know the Russian language after graduating?
No, we thoroughly studied the Education Act of the Russian Federation. We contacted the Altai Education Committee. I wrote a letter to them. You know, in the times of perestroika, I was often called to Barnaul to make speeches at the committee and was praised for preserving the school, was promised some help and support. But since then, the laws have changed and our state has become stronger. The new law says you can only have national schools in national republics. For example, the Republic of Tatarstan may have a school in the Tatar language, Yakutia may have its schools, and so on. But there's no Republic of Kazakhstan in Russia.
So we can learn Kazakh only as an optional course. All subjects must be studied in Russian. Our graduates have always moved to Kazakhstan at all times, even before the oral months appeared. That's because we are in great demand in Kazakhstan. We speak perfect Kazakh and at the same time we know Russian. We have to speak our official language of the Russian Federation. We insist that all students in our school know Russian.
Deep at night, we set off to the Altai mountains.
Oh my god, it's so beautiful, isn't it?